area. It's one of the few Gaeltachts that are still surviving, that have still got a very strong language there, that the majority of people in that Gaeltacht have Irish as their first language. And it's one of those very rare Gaeltachts. We have maybe one or two of them in Galway, one or two in Donegal. Other than that, all of the Gaeltachts are under severe pressure to keep the Irish language as the first native language. And what they want to do is they want to bring in 84 plus IPAS candidates or applicants from Nigeria, from Afghanistan, from Lithuania, from wherever, Pakistan, while their applications for asylum are being processed. And while they're being processed, they have to be put somewhere. They're put in hotel rooms at the cost of the Irish taxpayer. They're being provided with transportation. They're being provided with meals, with breakfast, with the bar, with other services that they need. Everything is paid for by the Irish taxpayer. And so far there's maybe several hundreds of these centres and of these places, probably a couple of thousand already, which is B&Bs, hotels, and we have people. We can't even keep count. There's nobody keeping count, and we can't keep count of how many that there are in the entire country. And right now they have gone a step further. They want to put in an IPAS centre in Carna, in the thick of the Gaeltacht. 84 plus people who will come in with zero Irish, with zero interest in Irish. We know that they have no interest in Irish from the increase in exemptions, which has gone up from 5% a few years ago to 12% of students getting exemptions. This is not only in primary schools, this is not only in secondary schools, it's also in primary schools. And we found out just last year, I knew in advance, I knew years ago, but it was only released to people last year via an Irish Times article, that the majority of those exemptions are coming from foreign students who don't naturally want to learn Irish. It's not their language. In that respect, you can't blame them. They like their own language. They're trying to want to learn English. And what's happening is then they're getting the exemptions, they're being processed by the Department of Education, they're being sanctioned, the principals have to go along with it, they're very unhappy about it. Irish language teachers are very unhappy. In general, it's a situation that nobody's happy with. It's putting pressure on schools and the administrators, including the principals, to give exemptions when parents are saying, well, my child needs an exemption from the language. So you have this background of exemptions from the Irish language in schools, which was from, in my time, it was a 2% that were taking exemptions. Then it went up to 5, rose, that was about 2020, I believe. And then because of the Ukrainian influx and all these other countries, it's gone rapidly from 5 until 12. And we can only see it going up. So the trend is already up over over this last few years. And as long as we have more people, younger children coming into the primary school age, and then more people coming into the country, is going to either stay at that thing, maybe go up by 0.3, by 0.5, or worst case, they're probably targeting 20%. So instead of the government saying, well, we want to get it back down to 5% where it was 4 or 5 years ago, they're saying they actually are looking like they want to have it at 20%. Their goal is 20%, not 5%. And they can reach that goal, and as soon as that goal is reached, it means that the Irish language can be taken off the curriculum as a mandatory subject. It can be made optional, and once it's made optional, we're not going to have a mass resistance to the Irish language where everyone says, well, to hell with the department, I'm going to learn Irish anyway. We're not going to have millions of people react like that and just all of a sudden they want to learn Irish in rebellion. They're not going to do that. They're going to let Irish go, and people are going to have no exposure to the Irish language in school as a result of this. And then they're never going to be able to catch up as an adult. If they want to learn Irish, they have had then no experience of Irish whatsoever, and it's going to be a lot harder for them. Right now, I came back to Irish after being in school, and I was able to get to C1 level, but I was so grateful to have had the exposure through the 14 years. And yes, it's not perfect. The school system is not perfect by any means. It's very flawed. It's the opposite by design. And so you leave school, you can barely have a conversation, you can't relax, you can't speak Irish in flow, you're just struggling for basic words, and then you give up and you go back to English. And we should be, after 14 years of education, and we have fluent Irish speakers in secondary schools. The Irish language teachers at secondary school level are fluent speakers. The primary school teachers are not. Most of them barely have Irish, but they have enough to kind of get you through to 6th class, and then from then on, the second level teacher could bring you the furthest. But the curriculum is designed that the teachers have to teach to the curriculum. They can't teach like as they would like. They can't just sneak an hour or two a week and try to get people just chatting in Irish and show them an Irish film, a short film, which hardly exists at all. They have to focus on the curriculum, on the literature, on the essays, on the stuff that comes up in the exam. And that way people the system is failing the teachers, and then it's definitely failing the students, and we're all leaving school. A lot of people then will say, well, the education system had their chance and they didn't, they botched it, I can't speak Irish and I'm not going back to it. and almost every single person that you meet will say it's taught badly. And for a long time, the Department of Education let the lie run that it was taught badly, bad teaching, etc. Of course it wasn't. It's not. You can't have a system where every single teacher of Irish was a bad teacher and they just didn't get to communicate the language. It's not at all what it was. The fact is that they're teaching to a curriculum. People have to pass exams. They have to get a B, an A to get into the education course that they're all looking to get into. They need the points, and teachers are pressured. They have to focus on the exams and the results rather than being able to speak Irish, because that's not been tested in the exams. So the Department of Education let the teachers take the blame over all of these years, and nobody has been putting attention on the Department of Education for what they're doing with the curriculum by design. They're deliberately doing this. They're deliberately killing off the Irish language with 1,000 cuts year after year. Decades are going by now, and people don't have Irish leaving school, and they will never pick it up afterwards. How are you going to in your busy life? You have to pay bills, you have to travel, you want to do different things in your life, and it's very difficult for every single person in Ireland to find that batch of time, which is significant, to come up to C1 level, or even, I would love C2. It takes a lot of effort, and people have other responsibilities. The government know that, so they know when you don't leave school with Irish, they know that you will have hardly any chance to pick it up properly afterwards. Except for a small clutch of people who are more interested in it in terms of like learning languages, or someone that might be in like study for a long time, might be doing a PhD, then they can probably find time if they're doing a PhD in some kind of subject that's easy enough relatively. They can batch off time to do Irish on the side, and some people have done that and they've come up with really great Irish as a result of that 5 years. But most people will never have that 3 to 5 years of dedicated time to get to really C2 level. Like me, you'll find time, you'll get to C1, and that's a really nice level of fluency to have. But that meant I had to sacrifice other things in my life that I could have been doing instead of learning Irish. Even though I enjoyed every minute of it, and it was a fantastic hobby, and it still is for me, I still resented it because I did it because I had to do it. But I resented that I wasn't able to just be doing like the next level from native speaker level, like writing novels, maybe producing films, whatever it might be. As an already native speaker, I was coming at it from a B1 level, having to try to scramble to get to C1. And then when you're there, it's difficult to move up and up every single level. So that's one thing. That's what the government is doing through the Department of Education. It's sneaky, it's manipulative, everyone knows what's going on. We get a debate once a year on RTE, that they debate, well, what's the problem with the sector? And then for another year, no one talks about it in the media, and there's no national discussion. And then every year it gets worse and worse and worse, and it's going to keep going until the system is exemptions at 20%, and then they say, right, 20% exemptions, we can't really have Irish mandatory anymore, we have to make it optional. The demand is not there. That's what McEntee, Department of, she's waiting for her chance, for the Minister of Education that was the former Minister for Justice, Helen McEntee. She's waiting for the chance to sign that document that makes Irish optional. They're working their way to this. Politicians, they have 10-year strategies. Unlike normal people, we all should have 10-year strategies where we have short-term goals. We say, right, after 2 years I want to have this achieved, 3, 5, 10. And even though the government, we all know now that they shuffle between the same two parties anyway, even though those changes happen, they have a planned strategy for how Ireland will go. Even if they change up who's ministers, etc. as they go, the strategy remains the same. And so if you wanted to achieve Irish being killed off, you couldn't do it in a year, but you certainly could do it over a couple of decades. And you could do a lot in a 3-year span, as we saw Ireland changing significantly in the last 5 years. You can do a lot if you put your mind to it, which the government has done. So so they've taken care of the Irish in the Department of Education, in the education sector. They can say that they're doing the right things, but we all know that they're not. It's undeniable. They're not. They're failing everybody. They're failing teachers. They're failing parents who have to spend a lot of money on their education. They're failing students. They're failing Irish people who would like to have fluency in their Irish language and are entitled to it after 14 years of learning it in school. So that's just one prong of the Irishness, Irish identity, of what's precious and what's our resource. That's what they're doing there in the education sector. Then in the Gaeltacht, not everybody is familiar with what has been going on there. We had serious storms all across Ireland in January. Storm 1, I think it was called. And there were like packages for people that had suffered loss of food, or like in the freezer or in the fridge, whatever. Maybe they had their energy cut off for 2 weeks in some cases, and they got compensation. They applied, they got money in compensation for the loss of their goods. And in the Gaeltacht in Connemara, though, I listen to the news every day. I learn about it because I want to keep improving my Irish, and I like to keep up with the news there. And we have a really good Irish language station, and they cover local news extremely well, and beautiful Irish as well to listen to. So there's just a fantastic experience all around. And I listened to it, and they they had several people, locals, who were happy to be interviewed and talk about what happened to them during the storm. There was a lady called Maureen Folan who was interviewed on TG Cahir, and she was there standing beside our Minister for the Gaeltacht, a new minister, Dara Calleary. And I had originally high hopes for him, but just want to tell you the story of what happened there. He, on national TV, she said, would you be able to help me? And he assured her, he was wearing his grand coat, he had his government car behind him and his swath of people, and he assured her that he would help her to get, because her roof was completely off the house, and it was soaked, she couldn't live in it, it was not possible. And she was obviously very distressed. This is a woman who speaks fluent Irish, who reared her family through Irish. That this is the whole core of the heart of the Gaeltacht, that these people exist and that they live in the Gaeltacht under these hard things in general. So she lost the roof on her house, and he promised her that he would get it. He would sort it all out. And I watched that news item, and I was delighted to see. I thought, wow, we have a new Gaeltacht minister. He looks like he cares, and I'm delighted. I really was feeling hopeful. 6 weeks later, she's interviewed by the same reporter again on TG Cahir News. And she says that she has had no contact from the Department of Welfare, the Department of the Gaeltacht whatsoever, and her house is still in the same state that it was always in, and she's going from house to house of her children or friends, and she's still virtually homeless, and she's had nothing, no help whatsoever. So I got on, made some calls. I think we should all be doing this kind of thing to help each other, to help the Irish out. We can't just stay in our own little units anymore. We can't afford to. And I made a phone call, I made an emails, I mean, it's too much to tell you the whole story, but I made, in the end, I emailed the minister, and I can gladly say that I did get put in touch with the Minister for Welfare. Secretary asked me for the PPS number. Now, I don't know Maureen Folan personally, so I had to call the reporter in TG Cahir. I didn't give them my name. I'm not looking for fame or anything from this. I'm not a TD looking for credit. It's just all done just as person to person. I actually just cared about her, and I felt sorry for her. And so then I called the reporter up, and he told me that he would give her the information that I'd given him about the email address to contact, that they needed her PPS number, that they would look into it, that the minister's office would look into it for her, okay, and see what she was entitled to. I don't know what's happened with that since then, but there were several cases of people saying that they lost €200, which is very credible, euros worth of food, and they got €15 in compensation for all of the food that got lost. And that was in the Gaeltacht, and they had to wait weeks for that, and they had to fight for that, thinking that they would get more than €15. Meanwhile, we're hearing that, everyone's being told, well, it's a lot of money, we can't coordinate staff, we don't have enough staff, we don't have enough resources. Yet we can coordinate resources for every Tom, Dick and Harry to come into Ireland and effectively displace the Irish, which is literally happening. It's not a conspiracy anymore. I don't want this to be the case. I'm a good human. I like to help other people. And when the Ukrainian war happened, I was delighted originally that the Irish were standing up and saying, yes, we'll help out. You can stay in our homes. People gave food, gave clothes, vouchers. That was the right thing to do in that situation. And it's extremely devastating what's happening genuinely over there at the moment, where the men are being slaughtered, the women are coming over, they're ending up in whorehouses in different country towns in Ireland to make a living. So the wives are now whores in Ireland, where the husbands are in the front line in the Ukraine, being slaughtered by Russian army that they can't possibly be hauled off the streets to go into a war that they can't win. They're being taken off the streets to be killed. So of course I care about that case. Of course I do, and everybody else does in Ireland as well. We're compassionate. The Irish are amongst the most humanitarian people in the world. Look at our reaction to Palestine. We're amongst the people in the whole peoples in the world that care the most. But they have used and abused that generosity. And what I was always worried about at the beginning, and it has happened, is that the Ukrainian people were themselves used as a conduit for the next phase of newcomers. And what they're doing is they're now displacing the Ukrainians, who are now sort of moving into normal accommodation setups rather than necessarily a room in a house. And they're bringing in IPAS centre type of people who are applying for asylum, even though they're not entitled to it. So Nigeria, Pakistan, these are safe countries. They don't, if I got their application right now and I cared that it was the Department of Justice, I would say, this is like getting an application in Australia from someone from Ireland. It's not credible. They're not an asylum seeker. Please find a job, make your way here to the country in your own way, and pay your own way like everyone else does when they go to other countries. Instead, the government is promoting this. They want these people to come to Ireland. We know about the Twitter account of the Green Party. They, in 10 languages, they encouraged the world to come, showed a photograph of her front door and said, you're going to have a key to your own front door. They invited people in, literally invited them into Ireland, telling them that a home was waiting for them, a free house was waiting for them. So they didn't consult the Irish people on this. They just did it behind our backs. They did it in front of us, gleefully. They're enjoying every moment of this. We have people in government, sociopaths, who are enjoying what they're doing. They're enjoying attacking us. They're enjoying making me upset right now. They're enjoying the angst that people have, that people are worried about all of this, that our resources are being stolen from us in front of our faces. They enjoy it. They keep doing this to us. So what they're doing now is we have cases where we're giving beautiful mansions, villas, we're doing them up, we're having all the safety things are going through, the fire alarms, etc. Everything's being put on and laid on for these people. And we saw last week a lady from Nigeria vlogging outside a beautiful gated estate. I mean, it's a very good quality place to live. Nobody Irish would complain about it, very few people, especially when it's completely for free. And she vlogged complaining about how they had nowhere to go shopping. It's fantastic that she also has money in her pocket from the Irish taxpayer to worry about shopping all day. I wish I could be hanging around waiting to complain about, well, I don't have enough shops to go to, or there's no shops near me where I can spend my free money. But no one has that luxury in Ireland. No Irish people have the luxury in Ireland. They're all either trying to barely make ends meet. There's a few in the middle class that have made it in, and that's great. But there's then this whole understudy of people that are not doing well, and some that are doing okay in that they're emigrating. So we have this case where 25 to this huge percentage of 40% or something like this. It's even an incredible number, I can't even remember correctly, of people, Irish people, native Irish people from the age of 25 to 35 who are living at home with their parents, and they end up giving up to that. So, well, how am I supposed to bring my fiance, I'm 32 years of age, home to my childhood bedroom? Am I supposed to live there with them? How am I supposed to get engaged and married, have a family? And they lose out. Some of these people end up long-term unemployed, never move out of their parents' home, and their young lives are wasted. And others then choose to emigrate. We had last year the equivalent of a leaving cert, completely leaving Ireland. Native Irish people, 37,000 that we know of, that has been documented by the government and released. 37,000 Irish leaving Ireland last year alone. But how many tens of thousands are coming in and being given a place to live? And when RTE interviewed them, they were from like a leafy suburb of Dublin. They weren't from like a disadvantaged area. They were very well spoken, very articulate, very nice, well-mannered people, young people. And they were interviewed and they said, well, I have a job, but I'm living at home and I can't find a place that I can pay for from the salary that I'm earning. And, I just think it's best for me to have a few years abroad and see how that goes, etc. And some of those just don't end up coming back. The parents end up then losing their own children to go to countries abroad, when they actually just, it's good to go abroad, it's good to have an adventure. Of course, travel is extremely, extremely brilliant and recommendable to everybody. But when you feel like you have to because you want to have your own family in the future, because you can't find a place to live, and yet we can find a place to live in beautiful hotel rooms for everyone from the world, the third world, then we have a problem. There's a problem whereby, and people feel it. It's a genuine feeling of the Irish being made to feel like a second-class citizen in their own country. What we had today was a very big example of that, even though it might seem slight. We had James Lawless, the new Minister for Further Education. He went on RTE, on Ripped, on News Talk. He was interviewed, so this was obviously a planned press conference, and where he kind of pretended to try to keep his glee down. He tried to hide how delighted he was with the statement. But he said that the Ukrainians need to be given the same, his mandate now, his main agenda would be to make sure the Ukrainians, he's using the Ukrainians, nothing against them, I've nothing against them, like I said, the Ukrainians should be brought up to scratch with the supports that the Irish get in education. This is the definition of gaslighting. As it is, the Ukrainians get more than the Irish get, in that the Irish family is now means tested to see if they're entitled to grants or free tuition fees. The Ukrainian families are not means tested. They can have a mother and father both working, which is the case in lots of Ukrainian families now. They're not all still on social welfare. Some of them have migrated into jobs, and their children are going to college. And those families are getting free rent completely, even if they're earning full-time jobs. And not only that, the children have a full grant, full tuition fees, and they can, even if they've done another degree already, they can do a second degree, they can do a master's degree in their choice of subject. They can do a degree in gender studies if they want to, or whatever they like, or they can do something useful like a law degree. Whereas if the Irish person wants to do a second degree, they have to go to something called Springboard, and they have to choose from a defined list of courses, like 1 year hitch dips and whatever kind of thing like that. They're not allowed to choose their course, and there's certainly no medicine or law or anything like that in Springboard. So the Ukrainian can go and do law and medicine free of charge for them, but the Irish person can't. Let's say lots of people want to change to medicine as a second career from maybe biomedical science or whatever. Some people want to go from arts into law. It's a common thing that people change their mind or want to add to the skills, and they don't have the luxury that the Ukrainians have. So today, I don't resent them having help and support. That's not the point. The point is that if we're all living in the same country, at least as a very basic point, we should all be means tested. If we're all working and paying taxes, then we should all be means tested equally. And based on means, you get the grant. That's the principle of the education system in terms of supports. It's not okay when you start prioritising one nationality over another. What that then opens then the case to, well, the Nigerians, why shouldn't they have, while they're waiting for asylum, they need education. They'll say they're not doing well, they're not entering the workforce. You'll finally hear the other story then about the SRI, instead of lying to you about how many of the immigrants are working, they'll start telling you the truth. Well, actually, we found a lot of immigrants are not finding work, and we need to help them in the education sector. And you're going to find that this is just a losing battle for the Irish, which is what it's going on. They're doing that by design. They want the Irish to feel like losers. They want you to feel powerless. They want you to give up. They want you to say, well, what can I do? I called my TD, and of course the TDs, I'll tell you a story about that now, they will be openly hostile to you. I called, and I'll go back to Carna again, I called up a local TD in Galway called John Connolly, who's from Fianna Fáil, and that is the ruling government, the ruling party in Ireland. And I raised my concern, and very quickly I asked him had he written to the Minister for Justice to ask him to reject the application for the IPAS centre of 84 people from wherever, Pakistan and whatever countries, coming into a Gaeltacht area, which is slightly more population-wise, almost the same amount in population would be in the IPAS centre. And I asked him, did he write a letter to the Minister of Justice on behalf of his constituents who are against this? Everyone is against it. The vast majority are against it, like 90 to 95% are against it. And I asked him, did he write on behalf of his constituents and ask the Minister for Justice to pull that application, just say no, which they can do. They can click their fingers today, right now, and say, that's not going ahead. So can the Taoiseach of the country, Micheál Martin. They can easily say, right, no, that's not suitable, and they can stop it from happening. They won't do it. And when I asked John Connolly, TD in Fianna Fáil, had he done that, he was interested. What he was most interested in was, what was my name and what was my address? And I said, my postal address. He said, yeah. I said, I'd prefer an email if you wouldn't mind. I can give you my email address. He goes, well, I'm very old-fashioned. I like to send posts. I said, do you think I was born yesterday? You want to know where I live, who I am, so you have that's data for you. Oh, no. Why would you say that? He's treating Irish people in a patronising way. He treats you like a child. He treats like you don't, like you're stupid. They think that we're a soft touch, that we're half retarded, because we've been such a soft touch over the last 6-7 years. They think that this is going to be more of the same, that the Irish will get a little bit angrier, but it'll still happen in the background anyway, because there'll never be enough Irish people annoyed at the same time that will protest in a strong way. So he then hung up the phone on me. I was very polite. I was obviously, strong-worded, but I wasn't name calling or insulting him. I told him that I would go to the media about him, and I told him that I would tell the media about him and give the phone number out, etc. And he hung up the phone on me in the end. I followed up with an email, because he didn't write me the email in the end, even though I did give him my real email address. And he didn't write the email, and I wrote to him, sorry John, would you mind sending me the email? You told me you had written a letter to that effect that I'd asked you about. And I said, if you have indeed written the letter, can you please send it? Of course he didn't reply, because he didn't write any letter. And he would like to try everything else, like, meet me in person. Too bad, John, I don't need you to fill out a form for me. I don't need your proxy help. I don't have a cataract. You can't buy me with bringing me to a hospital in a bus like they did, like Michael Collins did in another country town. He bought the elderly votes by bringing them on a bus for cataracts. He had a bus going to the local hospital every week until he had every older person covered in his district. And what do you know, he does get elected, of course, because he covered enough ground, enough freebie cataracts, which should already be done by the government, already the elected government. They shouldn't be up to an opposition, a so-called opposition candidate to build his name up. But he used the opportunity, and he did that. So they're openly hostile to you, and I told John that I was a constituent, that I'm from Galway, that spent time in Galway, which is true. And he still didn't care. He doesn't care about me or anybody else. His agenda is not there to serve the constituents. He's not there to make me happy or to do what we want. He's there to do what the government, what Micheál Martin needs him to do, so that he will get the next gig. He will not be only just a TD. Next time maybe he gets to be a junior minister or a minister of some portfolio, which is their golden dream. There's far more amount of perks and luxuries that they can get as a result. It's endless what they have. Drivers, staff, the whole staff around them gets much bigger. You can just expenses, it's humongous, and they are attracted to all of these things. Some are attracted to being extremely high up, so some of them is their dream to be Taoiseach, and if you make them Taoiseach, they will do whatever your bidding is. Some it's money, you give them enough money and pay. I'm not going to make any speculation about any individuals here, obviously, but you give them enough money, and that crowd of people are happy. We've seen it's been released, and RTE investigates politicians being bought off for something like €10,000 10 years ago. So 10,000 can get you a lot in a politician, 100,000 can get you whatever you need sometimes. So basically we know that people are motivated by different factors. Some power at the higher echelons, some money, some just local power. Everyone's different. But as I said to somebody else today, give me any day the Pádraig Flynn of Mayo in the world, rather than give me the likes of Helen McEntee. Pádraig Flynn, he was disgraced, rightly so at the time, because he said, well, you try, he said he was very naive and innocent guy in ways. He went on the Late Late Show and said, well, you try running 2 households. You know, obviously clearly clueless that he has 2 households because of the taxpayer in Ireland. Of course, everybody was disgusted by these comments, he had to stand down, etc. But I would prefer that type of naivety and a little bit of honesty in the person than what we have today in the politicians. We don't even have, you probably noticed that they stopped talking to the camera. They stopped doing interviews with the news. That started with Enda Kenny. Enda Kenny was the first Taoiseach who was quite poor in front of the camera and being interviewed. And he sort of never had the words, never had the wording. Came across as a nice guy, but he was never anyone somebody was going to admire or be impressed with, or that nobody would be wanting to hear what he was going to say next as Taoiseach. Not compelling, not a compelling character. So it started with him withdrawing from the camera and from the news and being responsible in terms of accountable, to his constituents and to the citizens of Ireland. He pulled back. And that was a trend then that continued. We saw that with Radker, we saw that with McEntee, even though there was huge focus on the Justice Ministry last year and the years before that with the Ashling Murphy murder. We had huge focus on justice area, and she barely ever surfaced. And when she did, it was only when it was an organised interview with chosen interviewing companies, chosen media companies. If you had an honest dissident blog or a small website, you weren't going to ever get a chance to interview her. If you have a chance to interview Helen McEntee in those days, it was set up for you because you are on the inside, be it from something typical like a very well-known establishment media, which everybody considers RTE to be, or the Irish Times, or Irish Independent broadly. There are exceptional articles, exceptional writers, but broadly. And then we have, of course, opposition media sites that position themselves as opposition when they're not. They're not at all. They're giving people a bit of an escape valve. You can go mad, on their Twitter pages or under the comments section of their article, and you can agree with everybody in your little echo chamber. But they're happy for you to have that little room, because then they know, well, you'll let off some steam and you're not going to be giving any more trouble to the government. You're probably not even going to pick up the phone and call them. You might call your TD and then you'll get nowhere, and that'll be the end of it. And the TD is getting paid handsomely to take your phone call. They're happy to take that call from you, even if you're giving out to them, because that's their job that they do in the whole ecosystem of all of this. So I will never get the chance to meet Micheál Martin in person, or McEntee, because they'll have a million people in front of them that have to take meeting me to save them from doing that. They are protected by several layers. They don't ever have to have a conversation with any member of the public. Unless somebody happens to meet them by accident and then they give them guff, then they just run away. They'll have the staff around them, a car very close by. You're not going to have long, as we've seen with people who tackled Radker in person. They didn't have long to tell them what they thought. He was shipped off very quickly and surrounded by his people, so that there was a wall around him and no one could get to talk to him. So what they've done is they've made the elected people are in the higher ups who are actually responsible. They're all being protected. We can't access those people. And we therefore just can't. That's why people are starting to say, well, what can we do? We can only call our TDs. And then people say, well, then we get people attacking each other, which is wrong. I'm not going to attack the next Irish person because I presume that they voted them in, because I know I didn't vote them in. Well, then he must have voted them in. Well, what do you expect when you voted them in? How do we know who got voted in? It's not credible that Helen McEntee would poll number 1 in her constituency, which she did allegedly. It's not for me credible that Simon Harris, who went from being polled, I think 11th, 7th, something way down the list in the previous election, suddenly gets polled number 1. It's not credible, and he didn't look surprised when that was announced. I don't believe it. So you can believe it, someone else can believe it, I don't personally believe it. All I know is that from when someone puts their vote into the box, they leave the centre, the voting centre, to go home, and then the last person leaves. From that point of the boxes being, allegedly sealed up or whatever around people, from when they go somewhere else to when they're then opened up on the big tables that we all see then in the count centres, that's all on RTE at that stage. We see the big tables, we see them shuffling the little stacks of papers, and that's made to look like, they're counting our votes one by one, look at that, and then they're doing the recount, so recounting all those pieces of paper, and we're meant to believe that that's all legitimate, it's all a little show, when in reality we don't know what happened from between them being transported from voting centres to the tally centre, to the count centre. We have complete gaps, and whenever anyone has challenged that in the past, they have Gardaí all around the centres where they'll kind of accuse you of wanting to tamper with the votes, like, oh no, you can't touch that. And then there have been sightings of van switches going on, but they're not going to let you see the evidence. It's going to be a very well-rehearsed system that's working on a regular basis. It's not the first time it would happen this election. It will happen. So that key people have to get re-elected, that are due to get re-elected because they want to get re-elected. It's clear that Helen McEntee wanted more time. She had a great run in justice in terms of like the money, in terms of the position, getting away with murder. She got away with the whole thing, and a lot of people would say to themselves, right, that was a lot for me, I'm going to step back, I got a lot out of the system, I'll let someone else now take a ministry job. She obviously wanted to still get in, so it happened for her. Of course, she got the chance to come back in. She will say and claim that she got voted in. I don't believe it. It's my opinion. I'm entitled to my opinion for as long as I live. I don't believe she got the votes that she claims that she got, or that the system claimed that she got. And this whole cycle will happen again and again. So if you have even genuine candidates going in, and there's very few of them anyway, they will poll last, and they'll make sure they do. So if that God love them honest person managed to get, say, like 1,000 votes, they'll make sure that that person got maybe 200. They will also manipulate that to make sure that it looks that make that person feel like crap, make the people think, oh God, no one liked him, I must have been the only one. So what this does is then it impacts you, that you meet people and say, well, I didn't vote for them, you voted for Fianna Fáil, because maybe someone was a Fianna Fáil family, and you're like, I didn't vote them in. I voted for like A2 or something like that, just any random person. I voted for the randomer at the bottom of the list, an independent I didn't even meet in my life, because I didn't want Fianna Fáil to get in. And you'll meet people, and everyone you meet will more or less be saying something very similar. So you have to ask yourself, then why did Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael get back in power again? Because it's obvious it had to have been rigged to some extent to make sure that would happen. Another piece of evidence that we have is that we had a lot of Fine Gael TDs quit their roles about a year before the elections, and it was like reported on. So we heard about this Fine Gael TD is gone. It was clear to me, and I made the prediction, that that's because it's going to be Fianna Fáil dominant government next, and they had to make way for Fianna Fáil candidates to get in, and so that's what they did, and it ended up being a Fianna Fáil majority, and Fine Gael in second seat. And now they're going to, because it's the way they form the government, the two parties, they're now going to swap again in 3 years. They're going to put Harris back in, and again the Irish people have no say on who's the Taoiseach. It's just Harris will be probably still the leader of Fine Gael. Maybe they get rid of him, I don't know, he seems to be a bit of a weak link, but they will put someone else in, and they will just keep swapping the jobs for themselves, as we know, and we're going to get nowhere as Irish people. So in Carna now we had a situation where we had Irish language newspaper, for example, called tuairisc.ie, and it's our only dedicated Irish language newspaper, and it's online. We have a new one it's in print, but it's not funded by the government. They are funded some other way, I don't know how, and it's brand new. Tuairisc is a well-established, I think it's been 10 years at least going, if not longer, and when the Carna story hit that the IPAS Centre was the application was being considered, and the thing sort of started to peak and the protests started to happen, tuairisc.ie had a very short article on it. This should have been a widespread, this should have been a story that they kept at every single day in a row, with updates. I was there as an Irish language speaker, and I wanted updates on that news, and I wanted to read it in my Irish language newspaper, that the government are paying them through First na Gaeilge. Taxpayers are paying for this newspaper. It's not their private enterprise that they pay for out of their own pockets, even through advertising. It's completely funded by the taxpayer. It's a taxpayer website and newspaper. And I'm entitled to see my news, real news that I want as an Irish language speaker. They're there in my name. They're there in the name of the Gaeltacht people, and they're in there in the name of the Irish people learning Irish, and those who are already fluent like me who want to read their news in Irish. They're there for those communities, at least, if not more. And they didn't cover it properly. They did one minuscule article, really short article. They did not interview one local person from Carna, even though their newspaper is based in Barna, quite 20-minute drive away from Carna, half an hour, very short distance away. Journalists of theirs live in Connemara Gaeltacht. They know the areas really well. It would have been nothing for them even just to pick up the phone, even if they didn't go there. They didn't do that at all. They used a quote from the spokesperson of the protest group. They used a quote that she had from a radio station, the Irish language station. They took a quote from there, they had interviewed her, and put that in. They didn't interview any politicians, any of the 4 TDs. None of them had a quotation. They didn't speak to any of them. We don't even know, it looks like they didn't even ask them for comment, because if they did ask for comment and didn't get one, you'd have, well, we asked John Connolly and Catherine Connolly for comment and they didn't provide one. They would do, that's what a proper journalist would do. They didn't do that, so they didn't ask, because it's not in their interest. Their whole packaging, the whole thing, it's about not informing the public. I feel disinformed by Tuairisc.ie from being a regular reader, regular checking up on them more so. I can't call myself a reader. They have a couple of outstanding writers, but those writers are mostly in sport and literature. Why? Because they can't make any trouble there. They won't be wanting to cover Carna's story. They'll be like happy to, they'll be doing their thing that they're being paid to do, and they're not going to be rocking the boat. So they put the little article and it was just in the headline shortly, and then really quickly afterwards went down the page, and that was the end of that. That was the end of Carna. No coverage yet. The Irish Daily Mail, the Sunday Times, the Connacht Tribune, Gript.ie, Irish Independent, Irish Times, Nuach TG Cahar, Reading the Gaeltacht, all of the media in Ireland, lots, like I mentioned, the English examples even, believe it or not, had widespread, they had photographs of the people, of the locals in their pubs, in their hotels, in their cafes, in their local businesses. They interviewed them and spoke to them. They had quotations from them and photographs of them smiling, trying to say, look, we're just regular people living here, getting on with their lives. We're not against people. We just want to protect our hotel. We want to have it for ourselves. We haven't had it for 3 years because Ukrainians were there. We were told it was going to be for 3 months initially. Now it's been 3 years. And, we are being affected negatively by this, and we'd like to have our hotel back as we were promised. 3 months has turned into 3 years. Now it stops. And that's a fair, legitimate complaint to have. You're entitled to your hotel in a local community. It's very important. People will go with their parents on a Sunday for coffee, cake. It might be an older father like I had when my father had like dementia. It was a good thing to look forward to, going to the hotel for a cup of coffee where he would have space, not in a small coffee shop where it was hard for him to coordinate. We could go into the space of a nice hotel cafe area, and he could sit down and take his time, and nobody was bumping into him, or he wasn't in anybody's way, and it was a very enjoyable experience. It could be just like it used to be in the past, even though he had dementia or early onset at that stage. So hotels are just, that's just one random example. It goes more beyond weddings or functions. It's a daily, weekly thing. People socialise in hotels. It's like a neutral place you can go without having to feel the need to drink alcohol as such. You can just relax and have a sandwich or chips, go for lunch for a change. Like a local woman doesn't have to make dinner for the family. She can go and eat out for once. And the local hotel is not so far away. They can drive home, and it's great. That's all been taken away from them. So their argument has been that. But the Reading the Gaeltacht have been fantastic. They could have been even better, but they have been really great. But everyone else has failed the Gaeltacht people. All of the people that should have been there for them have not been there for them. One of the main groups is called Cunra na Gaeilge, and it's being led by a man called Julian Gisbone for a long, long time. He's been there for decades, and he is a non-native speaker. He's now basically going from Dublin to Belfast. He spends all of his time on the whole language commissioner for the North, or language rights in the North of Ireland. And then he'll say something about South of Ireland, and then he's back to this agenda, because it's become a political organisation. So he didn't stand up. He should be going from Dublin to Carna. He should be live streaming from Carna. He should be live streaming from there himself, as the representative from Cunra na Gaeilge, who represents the Irish language speakers, and saying, we're against it because of the Irish language question, not because of the hotel. I'm not a local, but we can't have 84 plus people coming in to a Gaeltacht area, and without a word of Irish, and without any interest in Irish, in a thick Gaeltacht speaking area. We can't have that. He should have done that, but he didn't. There's no even interview with him on any Irish language media that I could find. Now maybe, like I said, there's one niche, and I did write to him, so I'm going to say that on air. I wrote to him and I asked him, I wrote to him and the communications director of that company and someone else, and I asked them, could they please, and I wrote a really polite email, because I wanted just to make sure that I had my facts correct. Did I miss something? Were you somewhere? Were you interviewed somewhere? I got no email. Had I been from government, from the department, or from tourist.ie or media, they would have responded to me. They would have answered me back, but I'm just a low pleb. I'm just a person in the community. There's not that many of people even that speak Irish fluently, even at C1 level, but they have no respect for that person that has learned Irish, that can write an email in Irish to them at that difficulty level, and can actually call and make a phone call and speak in Irish to them. They have no respect for that. They don't represent me. They're a political organisation at this stage, representing government's bidding, what the government needs. And right now the agenda is they are focusing on the north of Ireland, not on the Gaeltachts in Carna or Waterford or Donegal or Kerry or Cork. They're focusing on the north. They have installed a new president. So they had, usually President's Day is present for quite a long time in the Conor na Gael. They don't shuffle that often. They had a girl called Paula Melvin, and while Paula was there, she kind of took a back seat, and Julian was, back in kind of the leadership role. They have a new person now that is from Belfast, and he is now the new president as of the last, I think he was installed in February, I think it was. So he's very new. And he is now, of course, Julian is happy to stand back like a schoolboy, with his hands folded and his little book in his hand, and then lets this new president be the spokesperson, because the spokesperson is speaking Belfast Irish, and the whole match right now is we're being in the south conditioned to see the whole island as an Irish language speaking island, so that we can join, and that's just grooming us so that we see it as, okay, it's a unified country in our eyes. The problem with that is that we're not looking after the Gaeltachts in the south, and there is no real Gaeltacht in those 6 counties. They have no Gaeltacht as in they have strong Irish-speaking areas, which is fantastic. I lived and worked in Belfast for a year, and I loved it for that reason. I could go to cafes and speak Irish in certain areas, and I loved the sense of respect for the Irish language when I was there. But the problem is that there is no native speaker Gaeltacht, which is the core of the Irish language. You need native speakers to have a language thrive. And Conor na Gaeilge need to be working harder in the south while doing something in the north. I don't mind something being done in the north. I've nothing against the north being promoted for Irish, but when all of your focus is nearly on that, then there's something wrong. Not only that, they barely make a peep about the exemptions topic. So any caring Irish language organisation, and they're the key one, they would be on those 2 topics. Carna right now using that as the Gaeltachts must be preserved, and they would be also on the exemptions. They'd say, look, they would be making it clear to people that rate from 5% to 12% in exemptions is not the Irish. It is foreign people, foreign-born people, mainly, majority now, who don't want to learn Irish, and which is natural. Some of them don't even speak English. It's having outrageous consequences. That, just to go back on that topic again, there are teachers that have spoken out about it on Shock Law. It's current affairs Irish language show on Teach Car every week, and they interviewed a really lovely but struggling Irish primary school teacher who was teaching in the Gaeltacht area, and she said that she had mostly foreign students and that they don't even speak English, and she just can't get on with the class as she would normally through Irish. She has to spend time teaching English as well, because you can't go straight from nothing into Irish. The English is, they have a little bit of English, so she has to use that as an anchor to help them learn something. She can't she just said that she's overwhelmed. She was on the TV, struggling to even communicate on the TV. She was very uncomfortable, she was very nervous. She was begging for special eds, and then we find out then that this is a massive thing now, that in some schools there are more special eds for foreign students than there are actual normal teachers. So your average Irish student, who should be the Irish kid, who should be getting, that wants to go to do a degree or wants a qualification, needs the points to get in there to do whatever it is that they want to do. They're not getting the same attention with the teacher if the teacher has to teach English to the students to make sure that they have a basic level in English in primary school. The other students are going to get a lower level in education, and that's not right, because that affects their future. For the rest of their life, they are being impacted by that. And teachers, in my opinion, should be speaking out about that. They should be standing up for the students, saying that this is not fair on Irish students. At the end of the day, the majority shareholder is the Irish person. The majority taxpayer is the Irish taxpayer. Without that taxpayer, without the Irish person paying those taxes, there is no system available. There's no teachers. There's nothing for people to even come here to get or to see and to use. There's nothing for them. So we have to have a situation where if the education system is not able to sustain the newcomers, then we have to stop providing a place for people to live in hotels and renovating. Now libraries are being closed down. We know about nursing homes. Elderly people were taken out of their nursing homes and moved to other places to make an IPAS centre available there. And they were told it was because they were needy asylum seekers. They learned afterwards that it wasn't. They were very entitled, cranky Nigerian women who didn't even like what they were being given. How dare they be given a nursing home accommodation that's been a little bit improved? They don't want to live in that type of condition. So there's not even any thanks for the elderly person who is being displaced for that person to come to Ireland and be given everything to them for free. Well, that elderly person has worked entire lives in Ireland, has lived and has contributed to the Irish culture. So we are dying. The Irish language, the Irish culture is dying 1,000 deaths, and it's going to be year by year a lot of damage that accumulates over 3, then 5 and 7 years. We had a case where we've also had the case where Irish people were it was directed from an NGO that had the task to make sure that anyone that was complaining about this kind of thing would be called a racist, because then that would shut them up, because nobody wants to be called a racist, because obviously they're not a racist, and who wants to be called a racist? And that meant then that you had Irish people pitted against Irish people, assuming that that person is racist that they used to know their entire lives. Forget that everything you know about that person, because they're worried about the Irish person's infrastructure and all of these kind of topics, which are extremely important. We haven't even touched crime. They're suddenly racist, and people lost friends because of this. Because who's going to stay friends with someone that calls you a racist or implies that you're a racist when you're not? And something I have to explain to people is that the racist word means pro your own race. It's an ist thing. Ism is not an anti. You can turn at that, but it's not by its nature an anti-word. It's a pro. It's a positive. So you're positive about your race. And there's nothing to be ashamed of about loving the Irish language, loving your Irish traditional music, loving the GAA, loving the Irish hospitality, being proud of who you are as being a kind nation. There's nothing wrong with that. You can be saying, yeah, I like my race. I like Irish. There's so many races. You can like Ireland. You can be an Irish person that likes Ireland. It doesn't mean that you hate any other race. I, for example, had friends, before anyone else had friends, I had friends from every kind of minority you can imagine. And I never blinked my eye. I just went with individuals and who their personality was, who I got on well with. I didn't care where somebody was from or what their sexuality was or anything like that. I was friends with them. And that did not matter to me at all. So we have a situation where they're just destroying the country, death knell by pitting us against each other, by making sure that we are it's like divide and conquer rule, that we're divided. They had, I think Kate O'Hanlon is her name, she's on RT. She just recently, about a month ago, said to someone in the audience, well, what do you say if people call you racist? And the lady actually answered her, saying, well, I'm not a racist, etc. Well, I'm not racist, this is how I am. That question shouldn't be asked of an ordinary middle-aged woman who's just signed up for community saying, we're against this. And she's entitled to do that. An RT presenter, a journalist, should not be trying to use other people. What do you say when someone says? That's like hearsay thing. That's just using it's a sly way of saying, well, you're racist, aren't you, in a way, and making the woman be on the defensive, saying, well, I'm not racist. I wouldn't answer that question. I wouldn't dignify it with an answer on national TV. It's not fair. It's not right to do that to people. So it's just basically where we had a situation then where Ashling Murphy, who was murdered, as everybody knows that story, her fiance went on the BBC News, and he was interviewed alongside an Irish Times journalist who insinuated that he was racist through her choice of wording. And he's now, of course, taking a case against her, which is his right, because she insulted him on live TV. And there was no real effort by the moderator to balance that out correctly. Some effort, but not enough. It was let go. And this is a man who had just lost his love of his life to a murder by a foreigner. That same family who had been, all of them, put up for many, many years without being asked to work, without being asked to do something for the money in return, hanging around. So we had the case where this guy was cycling around the town. He had nothing better to do, no job to go to, he had free money coming in, so why would he bother? And then he has idle time, and then that happens. Ashling Murphy, I'm not from Offaly, but this is how small the island is. My traditional piano teacher was Frank Kelly, who happened to be the principal in her school. And he is an Irish music player himself. He's one of the best in the country at piano and piano accordion. And I was very lucky that he was living near me at the time before he then went back to his home place, which is Offaly, where he grew up, and then he went back there after a few years of being away. And he retired very soon after that happened. As you can imagine, the whole community was absolutely devastated. They'll never be the same again. I don't think any community could even understand what they went through. And everybody, the whole of Ireland was tortured by what had happened to Aisling, because she was one of us. She was like an Irish language speaker, but she was playing traditional music. She was sporty. She was teaching, primary school teacher. She had her whole life in front of her. We all, like, that's the typical Irish person. We're getting involved in our communities. We're getting on with our business. We're minding our own business. We have our lives in front of us. We're entitled to live our lives. And then that happens to her. One of the most tragic things that's happened, and everybody rallied around her and around her family at the time. It was something that made people realise, whoa, what are we doing here, giving that family all of this, and this is how they repay us. And this is not just them. We finally have some little bit of data last week for the first time, data from between end of 2022 to end of 2023, from the Pulse system in the Garda cars was released to say that there has been this is the number we've been given, so this is at least what it is, 10% increase in sexual assault and rape from their systems, from the Pulse recorded crimes, which is huge in that space of a time. Like to grow 10% over 1 year, 2 years is insane. It's a huge percentage, and that's what would be. And maybe it's higher, we don't know. And we would not have that if we didn't have an influx of people who are coming in, and I don't want to use the term unvetted, but they are not being, they're who they are. We don't know who they are. We've no trace of them, and we don't know. They're not being checked out. For example, we had a taxi driver who had been convicted of sexual assault in his own country before he came to Ireland. He was given a taxi license, no questions asked, no checks done on him, even though he's meeting the public on his own in his own private car. Nothing was done, and he sexually assaulted a 14-year-old girl who was coming home after disco in Dublin. And this is happening all over the country, all the time. And yes, we have our own rogues. Yes, we have some Irish perpetrators. Of course you will. But we have far fewer than other countries have. And we would like to have fewer crimes. No one's saying that it's all foreigner crime and that the Irish are perfect. That was never the claim by anybody, but this is what the lefties or the people who want to do you down when you stand up for yourself will say. They'll say, well, it's actually Irish as well. And they'll give you the example of the guy in the Defence Forces or the guy in the GAA or the guy that's a guard. They'll give you that, the pillar of the community kind of example to put you in your place. They'll completely ignore the fact that of the increase in crimes, how much it's gone up in just in that Pulse system. It's also been released that 1/3 of convicted murderers in Ireland are from abroad. They're foreign nationals. So 1/3 of our murders in Ireland could have been completely obliterated had we been having a proper system where people need to come in and get a job in Ireland in points systems, and then you get a spot. The majority of people coming into Ireland are not specialised people where we have a need for them, where we can't get. It's not the case we can't get Irish people for the majority of jobs. What's happening is Irish nurses, Irish doctors, and other professions are leaving Ireland because of the quality of life. They're not leaving because they can't get a job or can't get work, and then we're so lucky to have these people from other countries come and take that spot because they're gone. They're gone. That's feeding into the reason why our country is no longer livable in, or it's not as enjoyable to live in. That's what everyone says. The morale is low because we know that we're being treated really badly, and it's a situation that people feel very powerless about, and everyone is just trying to get on with their own lives. But it's very hard to ignore at this stage. It's really hard to ignore. And you can't let them get away with it. You can't let them do this to your country. Our ideal should be Switzerland or New Zealand. We could be that ideal. We could be working towards that. Having point systems. You don't give social welfare to somebody on the first day that they arrive in the country. You make sure that they have worked a certain amount of time before they get social welfare benefits. That way you get people who want to work to come to your country. We don't get right now anyone from Japan, from Australia, from Switzerland, or any of these, even China, because they don't find Ireland attractive. It's not enough that we're nice people. They want to have a good quality of life. They want to have low crime, which they have in all of these countries relatively, and they don't want to be, bumping elbows with whoever, God knows who, in Dublin City. It's just likewise with tourists. They've stopped coming. Tourists are saying they go to Dublin City and they can't see any Irish people, and that's true. The Irish are a minority now in Dublin City. In some areas they are, like in terms of living. There are some areas that are dominated by minorities that are not, so it's not even an Irish area anymore. And the tourists, of course, they're not going to come. First of all, the accommodation is not available, and if it is, it's extremely expensive. They're talking about €500 a night for some rooms in Dublin some nights, and which is well believable because the majority of these places are getting so much money, income from the government, to house these economic migrants, that's this whole tourist infrastructure is gone. It's not available. And those that do stick it out for the tourists are having to charge, and they can charge. And naturally, a lot of people that would have wanted to travel, the Americans are having their own troubles with finances. That and all of the problems we have in Ireland, we're not attractive anymore for tourists. So we're not attractive for tourists, people that we want to have come to the country. We're not attractive for the first world countries because we're no longer first world. They're not going to come to effectively what's going into a third world territory. And I hate to say that about Ireland, but when I visit a random town like I did recently, I went to Loughrea, and I'm not from there, and no disrespect to anybody from there, obviously. What I saw was someone from another country. She had endless bags from Tesco of shopping, like stuffed bags with a pram. It was on the handles, it was on the base part, etc. She was head to toe in pennies clothes, and I just thought, wow, is this it? Is this what our ideal is? That we come and we clothe them, we give them endless food, and they're not working, they're walking the streets just like the guys are, or they're in their hotel rooms mumbling, complaining, etc. That's just not the country that you want to have. That's a race to the bottom. And why should the Irish people have no aspirations? The Irish people have aspirations for their own country. Why should we let the government away with planning go to the Nigerian example of debasement rather than going to the New Zealand or the Switzerland paradise? We had a paradise in Ireland, we're losing it. We had a beautiful paradise of amazing culture, amazing language. We had activists in the communities making sure that we had Gaelscoileanna opening. Those people are dying off and getting demotivated in the last 10 years. And even the applications for Gaelscoileanna have closed down because you're losing your Irish people. They can't put up with it. It hurts them, like it's hurting me. It hurts them so much that they can't take it. Their mental health can't take it anymore. I'm right now holding up very well, but normally I'm having trouble sleeping. I'm really upset. I'm really angry. I'm really distraught in general on a daily basis over the things that I'm seeing on a daily basis, and I know that they're doing that to do that. They're doing that on purpose to upset me, to get into my life, and to make me uncomfortable about Ireland, and make me annoyed and upset so that I give up and I don't care anymore. But I won't stop caring. I can't stop caring, and I above all will not let down my parents and their parents, our ancestors who kept the Irish language going as long as they did in the face of massive adversity that's far harder than what we have even now. Like there were people that kept the Irish language alive, and I used to assume that these people were like just passing it on because they happen to. That's natural. You think, okay, they just pass it on, they speak it to their kids, they speak Irish to their kids, and that's how the Irish survived. In actual fact, the more deeper I got into listening to the radio and listening to native speakers, I actually discovered that a lot of them have been consciously trying to preserve the Irish language because they grew up with it, they knew what an amazing thing it was to have, as well as they have in English, and they want their children to have the same thing. And that has been what has been preserving the Irish language over many generations. Not just that they just did it out of habit, it's actually that it was a conscious effort. And we owe it to them. The Gaeltacht people have been the heart and soul of the Irish language, and they've really been the main people to keep the Irish language alive. Because when they're gone, the subject as a school subject will no longer be mandatory, that's for sure. It'll be gone before that as a mandatory subject if they get their way, but it will be definitely gone then. And people will be, when someone tells me, oh, Irish is a dead language, I can right now say, no, Latin is a dead language. There's no native speakers of Latin anymore. It's just a school, it's an academic thing you do. But in Ireland, we have native speakers speaking Irish every day in their daily speech, which is the case. It's not like me that speaks some Irish, it's their whole day. They do everything in Irish with their families, in the schools, in the cafes, in the pubs. And I can say that, I can point to those and say, what do you mean it's a dead language? And then these people that said that actually don't reply, or they don't say anything back, because they kind of forgot that the Gaeltachts exist. They forgot that there was an Irish native speaker, because they just see it as being dead because they see nothing happening in their own communities around the Irish language, or it's so bad in the school system. They're, like I mentioned earlier, like they're just saying, well, it's taught badly, and they're just giving up for that reason, and I don't blame them. I don't expect everyone to come back to the Irish language later on in life. What I'm trying to say is that yes, the Irish language is obviously very, 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 very important to me. I love the Irish language, but it's a very precious resource, and it's like a human being. When a human being is dead, you can't get that human being back. You can't bring that person back to life. They are gone forever. It's done. It's over. It's going to be the same with the language. When the last native speaker of Irish dies, you can't get it back. You can bring the likes of me in or someone else that speaks fluent Irish, and we can, teach our kids Irish, and we can teach Irish in the schools. It will never be the same kind of Irish, that rich Irish, or we'll be missing words, we won't remember how to say something in Irish, and then there'll be no one else that will know either, because it's not native. We're going to lose so much of even the dictionary, of the lexicon. It's going to go completely. And we don't want that to happen. We want to keep it alive for as long as we can, because it's worthy. We don't want to let it die off and then be permanently gone. There's still something to fight for. The Irish language is still alive. And don't let the likes of Tourish.ie, because they are of an agenda that's a left agenda that does not really care. The thing that gives them their bread and butter is the Irish language, and they have no respect for it. Several good people working within Tourish.ie do. They work very hard, and they write regularly, and they write really class, beautiful Irish language articles and great reviews. I don't want to name people. I respect really a lot of the writers and even their guest writers. But overall, if the editorial is bringing it a certain direction that does not feel pro-Irish language or pro-Irish, I'm going to feel that, because I don't want to feel that. That's the opposite of what I expect, and I'm shocked when I see it. And I've been watching it. They actually had a columnist who for a long period of time was getting away with insinuating that the Irish who were protesting against the IPA centres were actually racist. They used the word racist in the headlines. I've taken screenshots. I have all the evidence. They peppered the article with this word. And it's the same story. They never went to this local area and asked, well, what's your problem with that? No, they're racist. They're just racist. And let's shut them all up. Let's call them all racist and we'll be done with it. They're furthering a government agenda that is anti-Irish and anti the will of the people. We don't have a democracy in Ireland. I don't believe in I wish I could. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. There's just no way that certain people that polled high could have polled as high as they did. I believe that is all completely fraudulent, and that's my opinion. We do not, even if you say that is like really real, you put that aside and say, okay, it was the way it was, that's exactly how people voted, and you forget about the excess. They had an excess 500,000 people on the register they couldn't account for. They had duplicates, they had dead people. That was already released by the Electoral Commission itself. And those 500,000 people somehow voted, and those votes were counted as well. So, I mean, it would be very difficult to argue that it's a solid system. But let's say you did argue it's a solid system, you still have to ask yourself, what kind of democracy do we have? When a local TD can only be interested in my address only. Where do you live? What's your name? Where do you live? I'm old-fashioned, I want to post you out the letter. I don't send emails. When he's a young TD, he has a mobile phone, he has no problems with email, he has workers, he has assistants that actually would be sending the email in any case. It wouldn't ever even be him. He has a constituency office and he has workers who are paid for by the taxpayer to send me that email. And if I, as a constituent, wanted an email, he should be anyway saying, okay, email. But that's the reason is he did not want to send me an email. He wanted to instead get my address. So the democracy is not there. When I can't have a normal conversation with a TD and get listened to properly without being lied to or patronised in that call, I cannot talk to ministers. I cannot get through. I could never, if I request now, which I'm going to test out through the minister diaries, you can request a meeting with the minister. Any minister, you can get the email address and you can write and request a meeting with them in person. I would say good luck. First of all, people don't know that, so I'm putting that out there if you're interested. And secondly, let's see if you do know about it and you make the request to speak with, let's say, James Lawless about what happened today, about his comments about the Ukrainians must have to get up to scratch with what the Irish supports are, even though they're getting far more. Let's say you want to meet with them and say, look, you have all the facts, why did you do that? You want 5 minutes with him, you won't get that 5 minutes, but we'll see. I'll send the email and I'll request and I'll see does he meet with me in person, or any other minister that I would like to speak with. So in general, I don't see what democracy is when already about 2 years ago, we had the case where there was 87% of people had said that they were against immigration. And that's even higher now. And despite, in this Doonvarn in County Clare, there's an IPAS centre and 167 voted against the centre and 12 for it. And they still went ahead with the IPAS centre even though it was completely clear majority. So it doesn't matter if the majority is not getting what they want, we don't have a democracy. We have a tyrannic government. It's almost bordering on a dictatorship that pretends that it's democratic. It's anything but democratic. So my message is just that we have to keep going. We have to do not at all costs give up. Just funnel your rage in whatever way you can. We need to fight it or we're going to lose everything. The Irish language will be gone. They'll bring in more and more people. It'll be half-half. 1 in every 2 will be Irish. It's already 1 in 4 apparently. It could be even worse than that now. It'll be 1 in 2. They're telling you already that you're a second-class citizen. They're telling you now that the Ukrainians are more important than you. They're using the Ukrainians. They don't care about the Ukrainians any more than they do about me or you. They care about the agenda. And you have to start asking yourself about questions like why, which I'll do in the next one. Why are they doing this? Why would they be wanting to displace the Irish population? If they could, they'd take everyone out of our houses. They'd drag us all out of our houses and they'd put someone else in there. They don't want an Irish voter base. You have to ask yourself, why would they be against an Irish voter base? What is it about an Irish voter base that could interfere with the political strategy of the next 10 years? And that if that's not if that's not obvious to you, that's no problem. We'll definitely talk about it in the next live stream. Thank you for listening.